Hey there, folks. This is the Best Movie Year podcast. We look at the films of 1987 and ask, did they make 1987 the best year for movies? It's right there in the title. I don't know why I need to explain it. Folks, we are looking at the movie Secret of My Success. It stars Michael J. Fox and a whole cast of other people that you may have seen in other things, possibly, maybe. But you need to know one thing about this podcast. There's a video version of it. You might be watching it right now on YouTube. I had anticipated when I was going to do this podcast that I would do this intro right now, would play the opening sting, and then I'd come back and I'd be wearing an entirely different outfit. And throughout the course of this podcast, I just switch outfits backwards, and it's late at night, it's a bit hot, and I just couldn't really bring myself to do this. But rest assured, if I had, at some point midway through the podcast, I would be down to not wearing a shirt, I'd have a tie on, and I'd be doing this as seen in the movie. Anyway, folks, I've spoken too much. This is Best Movie Year, looking at Secret of My Success. Folks, this is the Best Movie Year podcast. My name, Dan Barrett, joined here by Simon Foster. Question, Simon, as we kick off this movie. You've seen this movie many, many, many times before. I'm going to ask you the top loaded question at the moment. As you're watching this with fresh, is this a movie that contributes to the idea of 1987 as being the best movie year? Eyes, did this movie hold up for you?
Oh, well, boy, you've come out with the big guns. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Best Movie Year. Nice of you to join in, whether you're watching video or on the podcast platform of your choice. Yes, I have seen this movie many times. The Secret of My Success was a very big deal back in the day. You may not know this, but of all the Best Movie Year movies we've done so far, this is the most successful of them all. It went to number 6 at the US box office, took a whole heap of money, which I'll run through in a minute. Did I love it? No, I did not. And I remember thinking back to the day, why does everybody love this movie so much? Now, there is the Michael J. Fox element, which I think we're going to enter into in depth a little bit later on, because he was the bee's knees back around 1987. And there is certainly the fanciful romantic element plonked right down in the middle of a very yuppie Wall Street type New York City that would have appealed with a certain immensity, I guess you could say, back in 1987. Does it translate? Does it hold up? Not a path we often go down on this podcast. We don't like to compare how things have aged badly because we love the movies of 1987. But let me just say, this has aged badly.
Look, I have watched this film so many times in my life. So many times. And I'm sure like in the last year I've seen this at least 2 or 3 times.
No way.
No, absolutely. This is a film that I revisit a shocking amount of times.
I cannot believe that.
No, honestly true. But this time I watched it through a different lens, which is a bit more critical. Okay, and I have to say, I've always acknowledged that there's some aspects of the movie that have never really quite worked for me. And this time watching it through, they were certainly a lot more glaring. That said, the things that I loved about this movie, watching it this time through, I came to love even more.
No, you know what we need to do? We need to have a look at the trailer. Let's just drop the trailer in here.
Michael J. Fox is Brantley Foster. He came to New York to make it on his own.
You're fired, kid. Sorry.
Mom, I'm doing great. New York is just like Kansas, intensified.
Luckily, he didn't have to.
I need a job, Uncle Howard.
Around here, I'm Mr. Prescott.
They started him at the bottom.
Show the college puke the ropes and keep them out of my face.
But he had a secret way of starting at the top.
This is Carlton Whitfield. Carlton Whitfield?
Well, I didn't hire any Carlton Whitfield. There's something going on around here, Foster.
He was trying to stay one jump ahead of everyone else.
If you're under the second lap, you still got a comfortable lead.
When his uncle's wife got the jump on him.
What the hell happened?
He fainted.
That's when he met her.
Tonight?
Booked.
Tomorrow night?
Booked.
All right, but don't beg, okay? It's embarrassing.
They were a merger made in heaven.
That wasn't bad.
That's when everything else
Howard, please.
went to hell.
I never slept with the boss.
No, you slept with the boss's wife.
Will you marry?
No, but I'd like to beat the out of you.
Oh my God. The sexual revolution is over. Everybody out of bed.
Michael J. Fox, The Secret of My Success.
All right, so what we have here, let's run through some of the stats on this. Released April 10, 1987, which qualifies it for this podcast. Fairly tightly budgeted film, $12 million it cost to make. That's 33 and a bit in 2025 dollars. As I mentioned previously, at the box office, it earned a whopping $67 million. It made Box Office Mojo has it as the 6th biggest movie of the year. That translates in 2025 dollars to 188 million and some change. So that is a pretty extraordinary box office run for an actor who was coming off, yes, the hugest film of the year in Back to the Future and one of the most critically acclaimed and beloved movies over time.
Sorry, I thought you were going to say Light of Day. Light of
Day, see, who doesn't love Light of Day? This is our second Michael J. Fox film as part of the best movie year ever. We're starting to see a pattern here.
Wait, what's the pattern? We watched one film that was really politely kind of terrible, and then this one, which was kind of fun.
So I have started to check the Rotten Tomatoes rating on this, but I'm very cautious to say this because a lot of the Rotten Tomatoes critics are very modern critics, maybe watching these through very modern eyes. So I've gone back to some of what some of the older critics say, and it turns out that it was kind of received with very mixed reviews back in the day. The Independent...
That sounds right to me.
Yeah, The Independent back in the day said it's the latest in a line of American films endorsing the merits of being worldly, ruthless, and rich. It wears its heartlessness proudly on its sleeve.
It was the 80s, man. Come
on.
I know.
This is a point. This is where a film like this, where a douche can trip and skip and bump his bottom through the office and say good morning to everybody in a really upbeat kind of way, can get away with that sort of crap. It looks as ancient as Room with a View when I'm watching this movie now, because it is the kind of behaviour in the office that... And once again, I don't want to do this with 2025 glasses on, but it just makes it really hard to watch. You're going to do it anyway. But I'm going there. So I am still quaking at the thought of you watching this 3 times in the last year. It was absolutely a go-to for me back in the day. I saw this at the Greater Union George Street Cinema, which was what replaced the beautiful Picture Palaces, the Paramount and the Barclay in the heart of Sydney. And despite us all being a little bit poopy about that, it was a great inner-city multiplex, and I saw a lot of movies around this time. And then, yes, it was just a staple, a VHS staple. Whatever sort of girlfriend you had at the time, we always ended up watching The Secret of My Success for whatever reason.
Yeah, but Simon, did you finish the movie? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I generally finished the movie. I didn't read the room very well back then. I couldn't pick up the signs, but no, I just want to see, I want to see the bit where he jumps in the pool. But you've watched it 3 times. You're looking at it through different glasses. What's your take on this? Come on, let's get into this.
Okay, so I mean, where does one begin with this? Do we need to do like the synopsis as to what the movie is?
All right, I've got it written here. I'll do it very quickly.
First, and then we'll do me.
Brantley Foster, played by Michael J. Fox, he leaves his Kansas home behind with dreams of conquering Manhattan, but his life becomes no dream. He lives in a small rat-infested apartment, and his hopes of employment dry up. He's increasingly desperate for work, so he approaches his uncle Howard, Richard Jordan. Why he didn't approach his uncle to start with, I don't know, for a break. Now, Brantley adopts the persona of Colton Whitfield, falls for the lovely fellow executive Christy Wills, Helen Slater, and has sex with his Aunt Vera, played by Margaret Whitten, and much shenanigan ensues. Single shenanigan. I didn't go plural there. So that's the plot of this film, and it takes 110 minutes to get through, which is kind of bewildering.
Okay, so we know why it was that he didn't approach his uncle, because he already had a job. Like, there was no need to chase his uncle, who was never met before or had any engagement with, really.
Eventually he goes to the uncle, but yes, I get your point.
He goes to see his uncle in the first 7 minutes of the movie, because we would have much of a movie.
Because he got bumped because of those rotten DEI initiatives to give minority women a role, which is the line that he's bumped with in early in the film when he's going for a job interview. So it's got a real sort of Marga bent to it, this film. But anyway, we'll get to that later.
You're really reading it through 2025 blue sky eyes.
I guess I really am.
But
right,
look,
okay.
Here's the thing with the film. So, first of all, one of the things I talk about, and we talked about this on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was just you and I don't really remember. Okay, but there's a thing that I have, which is if you think about like the totality of a decade's worth of culture, it's never, if we're thinking about the 80s, it's never like 1980 through to 89. It's always like midway through the years. So it's like 1985 to, like 1994. Like that to me is always, there's a greater continuity in terms of the culture. And we're kind of right at the beginning of a cultural decade here. So it is not a surprise to me that this came out the same year as Wall Street. And this is, and reflective of that review you gave a short while ago, I kind of feel that this was a new type of America that was being presented on the screen. You watch a lot of like the very early 80s movies and they tend to be a little bit sort of grittier and aren't really sort of as light on its feet as I think this movie is. And so to me, this is, it's embracing the greed is good before Gordon Gekko says it a few months from now.
Yes, it is. It is a film that, for most of certainly the first act of this movie, it's a fairly amiable, fairly goofy sort of comedy that where the working class stiffs down in the mailroom, and what is a mailroom? We'll get to that in a little minute.
I was thinking that while watching it. Like, it's just such an outdated idea that anyone would want to work in a mailroom, let alone that there'd be mail and memos being passed around the building as well, which is a big plot point in this.
The first office job I ever had a bunch of guys who were mailroom guys, and they, just like in this film, they would turn up at your office door or at your desk and fling a few bits of paper or a couple of envelopes into your inbox, and they would be messages from other executives or other people around the office. So it's
sorry, Simon, I didn't realise you were one of the suits.
Yeah, I was one of the suits for a while. I went from being one of the grunts to one of the suits. So, so what were we talking about? Yes, it's very much an 80s... And then it sort of takes on the sexual... This is what I found really strange about the film. It is this amiable sort of Wall Street takedown or Wall Street sort of kind of thing for the first act, but then it becomes a kind of slutty, a kind of conservative but still wants to be sexy kind of comedy when they go back to Aunt Vera's place and they have a swim with the weird flesh colours undies and you get a bit of a flash of nipple.
You talk about this like it's halfway into the movie. This is still in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
No, it's not. No, we're well past it by this. No,
it's right in there, Simon.
Yeah, look, it's a film that...
This is his first day in the mailroom that happens.
Yeah, look, I struggled with the so many different tones of this and what it was trying to say about... And the point you make is that it's a comedy looking at a new kind of America, or trying to address the greed is good, the Reagan era, and trying to place Michael J. Fox from his TV persona, the family ties persona, and the sort of Reagan era capitalist he plays with in that, into a more kind of realistic but also kind of goofy sitcom-y type of setting in a big screen movie. It's a tough transition for him to make.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it is that tough a transition. It works perfectly fine for me.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm now just scrobbling through the film to see how long it takes him to get to the swimming pool.
Let it go. It's longer than that. It
is further in than the first 10 minutes. We're looking at about 25 minutes in.
Exactly, yeah. End of the first act.
You know what? 24 minutes and 52 seconds.
I rest my case.
Let's get into, I guess, my sort of thoughts on the film. So, I've got a whole bunch of notes here. I'm just going to start rattling some off.
Rattle them off, yep.
Okay. The opening sequence to Secret of My Success is the greatest love letter to New York that I think there's ever been on the screen.
Oh my God! All right.
The entire film is about this guy who's he's a country boy. He's been given the opportunity to pursue the bright lights of New York City, and as you're watching it, it's not necessarily the big sort of corporate look of New York as you kind of expect. But for the first couple of minutes, it's very much looking at New York as depicted in fashion magazines at the time. So there's a lot of very attractive legs walking backwards and forwards across the screen. Okay, including a appearance from Cindy Crawford.
A young Cindy, yes.
The first screen, yeah.
Very tiny moment. But that opening New York City montage, it paints the Big Apple as a mix of sort of dishevelled minorities and hot women. It's a very white collar view of the people that live below them.
Yeah, it's like a real melting pot. So, like, you've got this guy who, as I said, country boy, who goes there, and this is the New York that he's seeing at the beginning. Then once he actually starts working in, like, the large office building, like, this isn't the New York that you see later. But it kicks off with, like, what I think is really a love letter to what sort of, fun and exciting about the energy and vibrancy of New York, which does get lost in the rest of the film. But kicks off there. I like there's, as you see in the montage, you're also seeing sort of the introduction of Brantley's parents, who are only really here in the very beginning of the film. But you see them sort of addressing directly to the camera. And you've got the father who says, I could tell him what's in New York City, okay, as though he's like saying, hey, there's nothing there to see. Yeah. And then the wife kind of calls him out for ignorance straight away with the sort of, I don't know how when you've never been. And to me, it was just kind of like the sort of... nice entry point where you kind of see sort of what he's come from. Like, it just sort of summed it up very sort of easily.
Of course,
so I think with a film like this, it's very easy to have a character who it's like, oh, look, it's this young, naive guy who's kind of fallen in with, corporate America. But, like, often you don't really understand exactly what it is that's come from unless they do, like, an awkward, third act where, they return home and then suddenly it's like, oh, this is the life that he had, and then comes back to claim triumphant. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, you sort of get that summed up right from the beginning.
But he had done a college course. Like, we'd gone home to talk...
Course. He went to, like, a, college. And,
Midwestern University.
Learned business.
Yeah. So he'd been away and done that, and then he was coming home and telling his parents that now I'm going to go to Manhattan. And... have hillbillies always worn red caps, or was that a thing before Trump? Because this guy's got a red cap on. It's like 35 years ago. So
I don't think they digitally altered it to meet your political concerns at the bottom moment.
Okay. So it very clearly establishes it, and you know that he's a country lad because he shovels sawdust with his shirt off. So that's that's an important thing.
I've got here in my notes Richard Jordan, who's the actor that plays Uncle Howard, the guy that runs the thing. Yep. Apparently he died in 1993 from a brain tumour. So just
very
6 years
sad.
After this. Yeah,
he's an actor that I've been a fan of. He starred in the big budget flop Raise the Titanic, but he was terrific in it. I always thought he was really handsome and a real movie star type of guy, but he never had that big career. Often working, but just... Yeah, and it was very sad that he passed away so early from a brain tumour.
Your enthusiasm for him makes my next note feel really sort of mean-spirited, but I wrote, he's a bargain bin Adam West.
Oh my God, are you kidding? A bargain bin?
Look at him. He looks like a bargain bin Adam West. He's got Adam West's hair. He kind of looks like Adam West if he'd been melted in the sun for a little bit.
Adam West used to lie awake at night dreaming of being Richard Jordan. Richard Jordan was a real movie star. A real movie star that should have gone on to bigger things. I think he was in... Good point.
Did Richard Jordan ever Batusi across the screen? I think not. Let me get to my next note here because you'll like this one. Okay, so there's that very memorable scene where he's, he hasn't got the job, he has to go and see Uncle Howard. So he turns up to Uncle Howard's office with the idea that he's going to be able to just sort of go in there and, talk to his uncle. Yep. There's a very disbelieving receptionist as he sort of walks up there. Anyway, I was just thinking that if I was working reception and a young man comes walking up to my boss's desk and says, hey, look, I'm your boss's, nephew... Okay, you just kind of wink and say, yeah, nephew, sure. And, either it's some crazy kid that's come up or it's some sort of boy toy, and it's probably the latter, so you just ring the bell and let that kid go in.
Exactly right. And I should point out that the actress playing the receptionist was one Susan Kellerman, who we remember most fondly as one of the dinner guests in Beetlejuice. And she's still with us, only retired from acting a few years ago. 2016's her last credits, so it's good to see her on screen. She's got one of those amazing faces. But you're absolutely right. It just took him doing a little bit of his charming, and she's walked him into the biggest office in the building. So, yeah. So
if she's in Beetlejuice, that means that she was playing the wife of Dick Cavett's character, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
That was her at the dinner
table. I remember that face.
Yeah, of course. Got a great face.
What else
yes, go on.
So, the problem this movie has, there's many problems with the movie, but I think that one of the real issues it has is that they've cast a female lead opposite Michael J. Fox who has... And look, I've seen Helen Slater on a whole bunch of things over the years, and I think, she was Supergirl. I love her as Supergirl and, all this sort of stuff. But she isn't very good in this. She's got no chemistry at all with Michael J. Fox. And
I don't think
evident
that's
from the
her
very
fault.
First scene.
I don't think that's her fault.
No, I mean, I think that a lot of it comes down to... It's actually costuming is a really big issue here. But the opening scene where the two of them... introduced to each other. Okay, basically it's just her character Christy. She just walks up to him at a water fountain and says, "May I?" And I was watching that thinking, come on, lady, be patient. This guy's just gone to a water fountain to have a drink, and you're just interrupting him. Like, who does that?
He's
Come on.
given her the stare. He's leaning over the water fountain like he owns the water fountain, or as we call it here in Australia, the bubbler, and and he won't get out of the way. He's just staring her down, and she has to say, "Can you move?" And I just got to
He's
say,
been there for 20 seconds. It's not like he was there for 3 minutes. Like, come on, there's a time and a place.
yeah, it's right next to the bubbler when you've been hanging over it. You remember those days in the school when you were
leering at people from the bubbler.
When you were leering at people from the bubbler, and all they wanted to do was satiate their thirst. So look, I disagree with you on that. And in fact, when we go a bit further into the podcast and get to our most valuable players, I'm going to double down on this argument. But I think, she is luminous in this, and the one bit of creative direction that Herbert Ross shows in this film is the bit of bubbler porn where it focuses in on her lips as she's supping at the water. He's got a thing for lips in this, like Tarantino's got for feet. He does it again with Margaret Whitten and the lipstick in the limo. And it's the one, I guess it's Michael J. Fox's character's infatuation, because he's always focusing in on the lips. I guess it's meant to be his point of view. That doesn't make any sense, really. But I don't agree that that Helen Slater is the Becky Gelke is the problem here.
I've got a note here that says Christy is such a pill.
Christy is... That's a word that's not bandied about much anymore. Christy is such a pill. Can I jump in quickly here while we're talking about the chemistry of the two leads? Now, he's a very likable screen presence, Michael J. Fox. There's no arguing about that. But I think we need to face the fact that he absolutely lucked out with Back to the Future. But he's not very compelling or very interesting on screen, certainly in a believable, relatable way. I always felt that this film existed in some movie star world where this guy can try all the things he wants to try and the world just reacts to him and deals with him rather than having any sort of consequence. And that just made him seem really privileged and unlikable in this, and I don't know if he ever recovered from that, because every film after this, the downhill slide happened.
I don't think it was every film after this was a downhill slide, but look, I'd have to go to the archives. But I think the element that needs to be considered as part of this is that your connection to this was straight away Back to the Future, but Family Ties is still on the air at this point. And to me, this movie is the wish fulfillment of Alex P. Keaton. Okay, who's in the Midwest town. Like, this is effectively Family Ties the movie, okay, but starring Alex P. Keaton after he's left the family.
I see that, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so I think that for a 1987 audience, they're watching it through very similar eyes to that, and I think it works perfectly. It's this beloved sitcom character that everyone's been watching for what would be 4 years by this point.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, that's absolutely true. It's definitely playing on that persona and that character that made him famous, and it's a safe bet, and I can imagine his management saying, yeah, do this, because you get to be Alex B. Keaton, but you get to be a little bit sexy as well and do sexy things. So, yeah, you would have... That's what everybody wanted to see.
It's actually weird to me that he's done this film after Back to the Future, because it's the kind of thing that you do because you're sort of trying to trade off like your TV persona at the time. Yep. At least it's the sort of thing they used to do back then. Okay, it's the sort of film that I don't think you necessarily do sort of, 4 or 5 seasons into your run.
That's kind of why I felt the sexy stuff in this was a strange way to go. That terrible scene where he's conducting his neighbours having sex and then opens the beer can. That felt like sort of 80s teen comedy or 80s, and it felt like a drop-in scene that the producers went, we need to dirty this up a bit to appease the younger audience because it's playing old. And at that point in time, it was directed by a guy called Herbert Ross, who is an old-school Hollywood director, a great director. He's got things like Goodbye Mr. Chips and Played Against Sam and The Turning Point, The Good Boy Girl. and he'd had a teen hit with Footloose before this, but after this was his last sort of young person's film. He made 6 films after this, I think, and probably most notably Still Magnolias. But this felt like a mismatch of actor, director, and material for me. Not a bad mismatch, a watchable mismatch, but just tonally, I don't think they ever got it right.
So look, I would agree. I think tonally there's elements of the film that never really quite get right. So I think that as soon as the Christie character is properly introduced and he's chasing her in the office, it takes a bit of a turn where it stops being just a star vehicle for Michael J. Fox, and instead becomes a bit of a two-hander for him and Helen Slater a little bit into the film, with a few diversions here and there. And when that starts happening, I think the film starts to fall apart, because the power base of the film is shifted, and it hasn't really shifted in a way that's to the betterment of the movie. Okay? And so as we obviously talk about, it's 25 minutes in that he ends up sleeping with Aunt Vera.
Yep.
And that, to me, that scene works perfectly well, but we're going to get back to that in a moment for a very specific reason.
All right.
Okay. You've got that. It then shifts to him trying to make his way up through the building when he comes across the empty vacant office and decides to become Carlton Whitfield. That stuff, it's pure fantasy stuff. There's all the silliness with the elevator, which only works in a movie.
That's the high concept. Yeah, that's what has to be the driver. Yep. Okay.
It's kind of fun. That's always been something that kind of amused me as someone who'd been watching this for all of his life. But I remember sort of as a kid going into a teen, that was always the funniest part of it all.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the flex in the lift is still very funny.
Absolutely, which I still promise that I will do it on this podcast before the 45 minutes is out. So look, we'll get to the nakedness in the elevator. Well, I will. But after that, as soon as you start getting into, he's won the girl, and they're on a yacht at one point as they're looking through financial records. As soon as that happens, it feels as though they're trying to work their way to a resolution out of what's a fairly generic sort of naff romance.
Yep. At
this point, and it doesn't feel like they've actually really got anything to say. And it's at that point that the film really sort of stops working, and that. At a certain point, they're like, well, we need to go to a bedroom farce, and they spend a lot of time trying to get the characters moved around the board to facilitate that. And that bedroom farce is the one part of the movie that is just always just, it just kills the movie flat.
Only a fortnight ago, we watched, what's it called? Blind Date, which also ended on a whole bunch of people slamming doors and running around trying not to be found at night. Also had a Doberman in it, which this one had a Doberman. The dog of the 80s. That's a lazy, easy way out for this sort of film to take. Why are they all walking around with all the lights on, going down to the kitchen for some reason? It was a dumb ending to a film. As soon as they took it out of the New York that we both love about this film and put it out in the Hamptons or wherever it was, out in the greenery, it didn't need that change of setting to make the ending work.
Yeah, I'd agree with that entirely. So, we talk on this podcast about MVPs, and before we actually talk about who our MVPs are, because usually that will take the form of people, I want to talk about the music in this movie.
Okay.
So, I think that this movie has one of the greatest uses on cinema screens of Walking on Sunshine.
Oh my god. Really?
Yeah.
Which part? Because it's used twice, I think. It's used 3 times or something in this film.
I was going to say, I don't know, every time I think about that song, I think about this movie, and it always brings a smile to my face.
Is that when he's going around the office going, good morning, hey, good morning? Oh, man, if I was one of the mailroom guys, I just would have slapped him with a big yellow envelope at that point. That was when he was at his most punchable. I really did not like that at all.
Okay, but the other song that I want to talk about is the use of yellows.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, is it a better use in this movie or in Ferris Bueller?
Oh, Ferris Bueller. It's known as the Ferris Bueller song, for sure.
I don't know, but the entire sequence with him going out to Auntie Vera, when I actually think about this song, I think about that sequence.
Oh, it's terrible.
Because I think the editing in that sequence fits perfectly. And to me, this is the best use of that. But the problem is that it comes after Ferris Bueller by a year.
Yep.
And so it's always felt a little bit cheap and hacky as a result of using a very memorable song.
Well, I just hope that when I'm his age, I can wake up every morning and find a woman as beautiful as you are, lying next to me.
Thank you.
Because in Ferris Bueller, the song, it certainly works over the top, but like I think that you could have run a number of songs there, but I don't think the same could be said here.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a total grab at the Bueller audience at this point. If I was to say to you that I've done enough research to tell you how many times Oh Yeah by Yellow has been used in movies, how many movies would you think it's been used in?
I can literally just think of these two.
Oh, no. It has been used quite convincingly in at least 12 movies, not to mention video games, the reuse of it in The Simpsons when the Captain Duffman turns up.
Yeah, that doesn't count. What movies? Like, give us a couple of titles here.
You want me to rattle them off? I can do it very
please.
quickly.
Do it.
From the top. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, The Secret of My Success, She's Out of Control with Amy Dolenz, K9 with James
Wait, She's Out of
Belushi.
Control. Is that the thing with Tony Danza?
Tony Danza and Amy Dolenz, yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Tony Danza was in it, yep.
Yep.
K9 with James Belushi and a German Shepherd, Not Another Teen Movie, Snoop Dogg's Soul Plane, Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Squeakquel. That one's kind of a ring-in because they're showing Ferris Bueller on the television. That doesn't count. American Pie Presents The Book of Love, Captain Underpants, Spider-Man Homecoming, Me, You Madness, and something called Bandit from 2022. So,
Okay, well, I've seen 6 of those movies.
oh, there you go. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
You know, you're yellow. So that's right. I kept thinking that we have to figure out. We're going to talk about Oh Yeah by Yellow, and I want to know how many movies it's been used in because it's been
lot.
A lot everywhere. Legit laughs for me in this movie. Three legit laughs. When when Becky Gelke notices his brown suit and says "goes nicely with your nose," I thought that was. I thought that was a very funny line. The treadmill scene where he's thrown off the back, then pulls himself up on the treadmill. I love a good treadmill fall. I think they're very funny, and he does that very well. And aforementioned the flex he does in the lift when he's caught with his pants down. She is terrific. Carol Ann Susie, who plays Jean, the receptionist. Now,
Yeah.
if I was to say to you,
This being his receptionist, right?
his receptionist, yes,
very memorable.
who's in on the Carlton Whitfield gag, which doesn't really make sense, and I'm going to return to that. But Carol Ann Susie, who's sadly passed away not so long ago. Most of us in the world of television will remember her as the daughter of the employment officer that George has to take on a date to keep getting his unemployment benefits. And she's terrific in this, and she's done so much work otherwise. So she's terrific.
I was watching it trying to work out why I knew her, and like I was pretty sure it was something beyond Secret of My Success. But as I said, I've seen this film so many times that like these faces are just burned into my memory.
Exactly right. Yeah, and she's very funny and a great actress. I always got her mixed up with Wendy Jo Sperber from 1941 and a couple of other things.
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future, of course. Yeah, that's the one. So, Carlton Whitfield, the real Carlton Whitfield, has been sacked. He's no longer with the company. That's correct, isn't it? That's how he was able to move into the office.
No.
Why?
No.
What happened?
The guy who was sacked wasn't Carlton Whitfield.
Right.
That was a name that he came up with.
But didn't the transport officer guy who was calling when Brantley answered the phone, wasn't he saying, "Hey, Carlton, when are you going to do your job? And when are you going to do this? And wow, when are you going to do?" So
yeah.
So the transport officer was expecting Carlton to be there. He didn't know that Carlton was sacked.
Did he say Carlton at that point? Because the guy that was in that office wasn't Carlton Whitfield. Like, everyone knew who that guy was.
Right. Everyone knew who Carlton was, are you saying?
And I'm trying to remember how the scene functions.
That's exactly what I remember. He picked it up.
To my memory, and I could be off on this one, okay?
You've seen it 3
sure,
times this year.
This bit is just kind of, it's just background. Like, it's like such a nothing plot
It's
point.
just plot detail.
Sure, I'm pretty sure the way that this works is that there's the guy that was in that office. He wasn't Carlton Whitfield, but we see him packing up his box, and he's pretty upset to be leaving.
Right.
Michael J. Fox's character, Brantley, he looks at the situation. He ends up faking the Carlton Whitfield character by sending out a whole bunch of memos around the organization.
Right.
Okay. So
as this made-up Carlton Whitfield,
as the made-up character.
Yeah.
So when he ends up in that office, because he goes into that office for the very first time, that's when he gets the phone call.
Yes.
So that's the Carlton Whitfield character has been set up. Because he knows how the company works, because he's been following all these memos around the place. So he sent out all these memos to places to create this fake persona.
Okay.
So it's established. Like, I think this is actually a perfectly fine plot point. I think it works.
Yeah.
Because we see him trying to requisition a receptionist, and it's functioned in the same way. He's just sent all these other things out to build the, perception that there's really this Carlson Whitfield
guy.
Yeah.
All right, I'll let it slide this time. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I just want to talk very quickly about, before we move on, I just want to talk, we mentioned What's a Mailroom before. Back then, it was a very specific and very sort of, although it's totally antiquated as a concept now, but it was an iconic part of the business world in a pre-internet sort of business setting. People like Mike Ovitz, the killer sort of super agent of the day, Barry Diller, who ended up running Fox, David Geffen.
It felt so much more like a Hollywood idea than something which actually reflects like a New York business.
Yeah, well, they all sort of moved up. There was a lot of people. I think the guy who now runs ESPN, or did run ESPN, he literally came from the mailroom to the top of the company.
Yeah, the mailroom in Hollywood has long been seen as a way into agency land, effectively. Or agent land.
Agent land, yeah, for sure. It's a little, I've got to be careful how I do this, a little indelicate. Michael J. Fox spent a lot of this film with his hand in his pocket for a lot of those scenes, and if you've seen the documentary Still, you realise that was one of the tricks he used to sort of cover his shaking hand when the
Had he realised this early on? I thought it was more like an early 90s thing, though.
Well, now that's what I was sure of. I started to really notice he was walking around with his hand in his pocket, and then I checked it, and he first noticed the Parkinson's symptoms when he was filming Doc Hollywood. He had a big night on the Terps, and this is all covered in the documentary.
Which is like 91.
Yeah, it was 91. And so, I mean, that's 5 years after he was making this. So maybe it's just
I think it's a character thing.
A character thing with his bouncy walk when he walks around. So, yeah, look.
Have we done MVPs yet?
No, we haven't done MVPs. Well, you touched on MVP because you love the music.
Yeah, but let's talk about actual people.
All right.
You want to go first?
All right. I'm going to do a group MVP. The women in this. I think they're the only real human beings in this movie. Helen Slater, certainly Margaret Whitten, the late, great Margaret Whitten, as Aunt Vera. She gives this movie juice when it needs it.
She is so funny in this movie.
She is very funny in this movie. She is close to the MVP standalone for me. And I mentioned Susan Kellerman as the receptionist and Carol Ann Susi as Carlton's receptionist. But I think the film comes alive. And Herbert Ross was known for being a much better director of women than men. He did The Turning Point, and as I mentioned, he did Still Magnolias after this, and I think he handles the women characters better than he did the men characters. So that's what I'm going to say as my MVP.
I'm going to go John Pankow, who plays the mailroom friend.
All right, Brantley, you stick with me and everything's gonna be copacetic. Twice a day you deliver, like a mailman, you pick up whatever's going out. I can do it in 30 minutes. Reagan thinks it takes me 2 hours.
Okay, what's this department? What do they do here?
Who knows, man? This place is a zoo. Nobody knows what anybody else is doing.
Can you get promoted out of the mailroom?
You can't even get paroled out of the mailroom. Excuse me, dear.
Morning.
Nix.
What? Morning.
Look, not the suits.
What do you mean?
Excuse me, sir.
Morning.
Look, not the suits, man. You never consort with the suits unless they consort with you first.
Yeah.
I thought he was underused. I remember him being in this more. I thought he was underused a bit.
This is exactly it, and this is why I think he's the MVP, because it's a fairly thankless role.
Yeah.
Which, to my memory, every time I go into this, I think that, he's in it just a whole bunch, but he's really not. It's really just a few select scenes here and there and a few insert shots.
Yep.
But he's just feels like so much larger in this movie as a presence than he actually is. And then this is the film that sort of ignited my lifelong obsession with John Pankow, who we've subsequently seen, most notably, I guess, in Mad About You for most of that series run, playing Cousin Ira.
Sure.
But then also Monkey Shines and Experiment in Fear.
Love it.
Yeah, great film.
Romero.
Pankow also, as I came to learn in recent weeks, well, earlier this month really, to live and die in LA as well, which, yeah. So he did
terrific
that
character actor.
Got lost for about 2 years in Hollywood and then this came along.
And did what he exactly had to do in this film, and that's take the few scenes he was in and make them memorable, be a really sort of strong sort of comedic character, but also strong grounding character for all the madness that's going on around him. So yeah, I totally agree. He was terrific in this.
I know, is he really a comedic character in this? Like, I agree. I think he does a great job in grounding the world of the show and creates that sort of really great dichotomy of... because the film opens, as we were talking about, from a very ground level perspective with Michael J. Fox's character looking up.
Yeah.
And so he's the thing that keeps on weighing Michael J. Fox's character down to like that level of, street value.
Playing as sort of a straight man to Michael J. Fox's zaniness.
Yeah.
I guess so. If we get to the final thoughts on this...
Sorry, but before we get to that, I've also got a note here. There's one guy who is ostensibly kind of a extra, but I can't help but feel... he may have a line or two, I'm not too sure. But
I know who you're talking
about.
about. Yeah.
It's the bald gentleman with the moustache.
Exactly right. Who's in so many films from this period and for many years afterwards. Do you know his name? Because I didn't get it.
I don't, and I was looking that up and I couldn't find it. And I'm sure, because this, as we're recording this podcast, I'm involved in this project where I'm watching a movie every day throughout a month, which is not something I do that often. Okay, but I'm sure I saw him in a movie the other day, and I don't remember what it was that I was watching. But he was present.
Yeah, we should find out before the end of the podcast because he's been in everything. But
I was looking it up while I was watching the film and I couldn't really quite pick it. But he's not only in this a lot, and there's a lot of scenes that kind of revolve around him not saying anything, but he's certainly there. But there's even scenes where Michael J. Fox is walking around on the streets of New York, and you see this guy's head just bobbing around in like the crowds. Like, he is everywhere. And the other guy I wanted to point out is there's I'm going to say early-ish career, but I don't know how early it really is. Mark Margolis as the elevator repairman.
Oh yeah, of course, with that hardened face, that tough guy face that he's got. Yeah, he's done some great work.
Anyway, fantastic. Best elevator repair work I've seen on screen in a long time.
He does good elevator repair. All right, my final thoughts on this. I realise I'm fonder of my memories of this film than I find I am about the film itself. This was a very much a under the cuddle on the couch, put on Secret of My Success tape and watch it with Miguel, and I have a fond memory of it being kind of a big deal at the movies as well, and it obviously took some money, so it was a big deal. I didn't realise how much of a dick Michael J. Fox kind of was, in fact, most of the men in this movie are just terrible people. But yes, I realise I'm fonder of the movie as a memory than I am of the movie itself.
Yeah, look, I get that. To me, when I was watching it, I think I was paying more attention and looking for the things that didn't quite work in the movie than I usually do. But as a generic bit of Hollywood entertainment from this period, I was totally fine with it. I talk a lot about the idea of the party movie, and this film, just on the nature of the fact it's 1987, the bits that don't work in the movie is that bedroom farce, but that's also when the film turns into more of a party movie. Okay, and that's kind of evident by the fact that bedroom farce isn't just a bedroom farce, it's also a music video. As is
There are so many montage sequences in this. They could have cut a couple of when they go to the montage and he's up on doing the sermon on the mount up on the hill there, and all the rich men are, which is an important part of the film. That's when they hatch the plot to take over the business at the end of the film. He establishes all those relationships with the rich people so that the end of the film can work, sort of. Ish.
Works adjacent.
They play a song over the whole thing, which I found just frustrating. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's kind of like just music montage, but the bedroom farce, to me, that was music video.
Yeah, it was very true. Does it help our argument that 1987 is the best year ever? I'm going to sit on the fence with this one because it's of the day and was fine in the day. I don't think it's anyone's best work, but I think it definitely spoke to the period and the greed is good yuppie culture of the period. I thought it was lazy in the way it skewered that. I thought it sort of treated it with kid gloves and didn't really address the immorality of everyone in it. But if for a few laughs and some pretty people doing crazy things, that it worked fine.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm not really looking for any weight in this movie. If the film got a little bit too serious and had a message. Look, let's not make fun of Michael J. Fox's height. We don't need to go there.
There's scenes where Helen Slater's looking right over the top of his head.
It's fine.
Okay. All right, we'll let that slide.
I'm all right with it. But, look, I think this movie is quite a fair bit of fun. To me, this is absolutely a standout of 1987. As I start looking through all the titles of 1987.
A standout? Really?
It is. I think... If you think about like the totality of the first 4 months of this movie, like I think to my mind, outside of maybe The Stepfather at the very beginning, this is the best movie we've watched so far.
Oh, for the love of Pete!
Oh, come on, it is. We've seen a lot of guff.
Okay. All right.
Well,
we're
working our way through the beginning of the movie.
So we're bumping Lethal Weapon. We're bumping Raising Arizona. We're bumping The Stepfather over because of this.
Forgot about Lethal Weapon. I'm okay with Raising Arizona because I actually didn't like that one very much.
Wow. Okay. This is getting crazy.
The heart wants what the heart wants.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Oh, you went for the secret of my success. What will be the film next week, and how can people find it? I've got written here. Oh, next week it's the monkey movie with Matthew Broderick, Project X. Are chimps monkeys, or are they primates? I'm not quite sure. Are they apes? They're all primates, aren't they?
We should look that up.
We really should know before next week's recording.
My wife's a veterinary pathologist. She could probably let me know.
Oh, ask her, would you?
Yeah, I'll be sure to.
In a moment of passion, just say, hey, are chimps apes or monkeys? Hasn't got something to do with the tail?
This podcast regularly comes up during these sort of intimate moments in my life.
I bet it does, yeah. Well, when you quit halfway through and jump up and said, oh, Simon's waiting on for me, I've got to go.
Yeah, I'll leave my comments aside on that one.
Matthew Broderick and a very young Helen Hunt in Project X with a monkey. She's not playing the monkey, although she could. She's a terrific actress. She's the offsider. Then we go to Extreme Prejudice, which is a Walter Hill film. I am so looking forward to that because that is a rock-solid piece of He-Man action and violence. And then The All-Nighter with Susanna Hoffs from the Bangles. Wow, we've got a fun month ahead of us.
3 movies I have not seen.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Now, Project X I may have seen. This is one of these ones where I feel that I haven't, but I also kind of know that as I get halfway through, I'll be like, oh, wait, no, this is absolutely something I saw at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
There was a lot of monkey movies back in this time, so it could have been confused with Greystoke.
I've never seen Greystoke.
Oh, boy, it's as dull as dishwater, but, you know.
One of Annie McDowell's best vocal performances.
And or Glenn Close's. All right, for those that know, they know. Yes. Daniel Barrett, wrap up this podcast.
Well, I deem this podcast wrapped. My name's Dan Barrett, joined here by Simon Foster. This is Best Movie Year. We'll be back with other movie years. Check out our YouTube channel. Check out the podcast. Tell your friends, your aunts, your uncles, anyone who's purporting to be your new boss. Be sure to do that. Ignore the ringing fire alarm in the elevator as you're giving your podcast recommendations.
Call back.
Yes.
Thank you, mate.
You can find us on other platforms. I do a newsletter. It's called Always Be Watching. It looks at the world of TV streaming and film. Simon, you do a more film-based newsletter as well called Screen Space. You can check it all out. Mine's at alwaysbewatching.com. Simon's at, is it screen-space.net?
Beautifully remembered. I knew you were a fan. You never mentioned it.
Does that lead to the Substack, though?
Not yet. It will. Go to the Substack page for some real screen spacey kind of stuff.
How do you find that? Do you just type in screen-space.substack.com?
Can we discuss this later, please?
I'm just trying
yes.
to promote your work. That's
Screen
all I'm trying
Space.
to do.
Yes, screenspace.substack.com.
Okay. Is it one word?
Daniel, I don't remember.
Jeez. Okay. Well, I guess go to google.com. which is http:// give that a go.
No
Folks,
this
has been the Best Movie Year podcast. We'll be back with more of this in the coming weeks. Like and subscribe. See you then.